Alright, are you excited for today's weekly Godzilla fact?
I can't wait.
Because you don't even know it.
I don't look at that book.
Today's Godzilla fact is number 38. Godzilla was originally going to be created with the same stop motion as the original King Kong. But the filmmakers realized that no one in Japan was skilled enough to perform stop motion. It also would have been much more expensive and taken too long.
No one in Japan could do it.
Nope.
In the whole country.
No. Especially at that time. It was a very niche...
opinion-based facts.
No,
book.
That's true.
There's not a single person in Japan.
There's no company that could have taken on a full feature film.
I should have said company.
Well, yeah,
I guess I'm going to nitpick the shit out of these every time.
Don't harsh my Godzilla facts.
I decided.
This one is bullshit.
Tear
Hold
him
on.
apart.
Number 39. The first Godzilla movie is considered to be the best.
Opinion-based facts. There's no... That's just him saying this is my favorite one.
Okay, fine. Number 41 to make it up to you, I guess. This one is bonus Godzilla fact. Godzilla's roar was made by dragging a resin-coated leather glove up and down a double bass and then playing the sound in slow motion.
I did know that, actually. That's a fact.
And the roar's echo was made from an empty toilet tank.
Weird.
Yeah.
All right.
Are you happy? Are you satisfied
That's
now?
much better. Yep.
Jeez. That was your weekly Godzilla fact. Facts. Hey there, infected, chimps, taxi drivers, and the worst soldiers I've ever seen.
Welcome to another episode of What Happens in the Crypt.
Today, we're talking about the 2003 film, 28 Days Later.
This movie's so good.
Oh, and it was directed by Danny Boyle. And yes, it is so good.
4 weeks after a mysterious, incurable virus spreads throughout the UK, a handful of survivors try to find sanctuary.
Oh, look at you doing the synopsis.
I do it half the time.
I do it most of the time.
I said half. Oh my god.
Trigger warnings include attempted sexual assault, drug use, and a lot of gore. Mm-hmm. I would say there's a lot of disturbing imagery.
I think, however, the almost sexual assault is the most graphic part of the movie, most upsetting.
I mean, the thumbs to the eyeballs is probably the most upsetting.
But yes,
gross. This movie's got a lot.
Yep. Also, this was definitely weird watching it this time around after still being in an actual pandemic, I thought. I thought that was a really interesting take on watching it because I haven't seen it in a while. And definitely feels weird, with all the missing people, which in our reality is dead people, you know?
So this movie has a few different taglines. The first one being, his fear began when he woke up alone. His terror began when he realized he wasn't.
I thought these all were kind of weird. Day 1, exposure. Day 3, infection. Day 8, epidemic. Day 15, evacuation. Day 20, devastation.
I mean, that one doesn't even make sense.
It doesn't say 28 days anywhere.
It's not 28 days. And then it happens, they get infected, instantly.
Right.
So it's
I think that's probably from, the CDC or something. The devastation is not anywhere on the CDC guidelines of an infection.
Because, day 15, evacuation, almost everybody was dead within the first 2 weeks in this movie. The next one. The days are numbered. Wait, is that two things? Or is that just one?
That's two. That's the whole tagline.
That's the whole tagline? Just the days are is it because of the title?
Yeah, definitely. I wonder, what does it say on the DVD? Oh, that's funny too. On the movie, it has the stupid one.
Okay. So
on the poster.
Exposure. Day 3, infection. Day 8, epidemic. That's the movie poster one.
Yeah. That's what I was wondering, because I knew that there was a line on it.
I don't like that day 20 is devastation. Like,
Yeah.
that would happen immediately.
And then at the bottom it says the days are numbered. 2 for 1.
Oh, it's both. Okay. And then the final one. Be thankful for everything, for soon there will be nothing.
Yep.
I don't know if I like any of those.
No, that's why I put them all in there for you to look at.
Yeah, I never look at the taglines ahead of time. Mm-hmm. For me, the most interesting thing about this movie is all of the locations that it's shot at, because, I mean, the effects are not the highlight of this movie.
No.
Like, some zombie movies are like, some zombies are like missing limbs or getting their heads blown apart. But this movie, there's not really, like, the violence isn't the focus. And, like, they're not zombies in this movie.
Right.
They're infected. So they're still humans.
Yeah. I think this one, exactly like you're saying, the locations, it's like the world building is
great.
the main point of it, is that it does make you feel like this is abandoned London, that they're alone, that all of this stuff is happening.
And it's very character driven movie as well. So
it's almost like a drama set place in
a pandemic,
an apocalypse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For the hospital that Jim wakes up in, it is actually a real hospital, but only during the week. It's a hospital that doesn't have, like, what is that called? Overnight patients. Mm-hmm. So the hospital actually rents itself out for production on the weekends.
So weird. I had never heard of anything like this before. That must be like a UK thing, right?
No, they do that here in the U.S. Pause for real gangsters. I had to pause because that guy's dick was just so big.
So big. Do you hear how loud his music was? Had to be gigantic.
Yep. Anyways, for that hospital, all of the profits from the movie actually go back into the hospital's trust fund, which is interesting because that means, like, nobody's directly, like, making a profit from it. It's going towards keeping the hospital running and staffed and funded.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Which I'm sure they do here, but I'm sure somehow it's more for profit.
Yeah.
Because it's the U.S.
Of course it is. It's literally, if they do it here, it goes directly into the CEO of the hospital's pocket, and no one else knows about it or sees anything.
But this scene, I can never watch this movie and not think of The Walking Dead. But it's funny because this is way before The Walking Dead.
But is it before the comic?
Actually, let's check.
Because I do believe that's how the comic starts.
It's exactly how the comic starts. Or the Walking
show.
Dead.
Yeah.
Both start the exact same way.
So I've read the first issue.
There's a brief moment before Rick wakes up in the hospital. Because he's, like, chasing... There's, like, a car chase, and the... criminal's car, like, flips over, and then he gets shot, and then he wakes up.
Right.
But it's the same thing. He's alone in the hospital, strung up with, like, an IV.
Yeah, I just wonder if that graphic novel came before 28 Days Later. However, it's a good start for any kind of zombie thing.
Oh my goodness, beginning in 2003. So no, that's like...
Interesting.
They would have, like, come out almost the same time.
Because, this came out in 2001, right?
20 Days Later came out in 2003.
Interesting. Well, I'm going to lean
I guess 2002.
Yeah.
It came out in 2002, technically.
And it was released in 2002, so that was filmed.
It would have been written
earlier.
in 2001.
Yeah.
But that's funny that they were so close.
So Walking Dead ripped off 28 Days Later. Good to know. I already don't give a shit about that show or franchise in any capacity.
I liked the first, 3 seasons a lot.
Same, but it's
then there were 9 more.
It's still on, isn't it?
Uh-huh.
And there's, spin-off ones.
Uh-huh. Fear the Walking Dead and...
There's one on Shudder, too.
Is there?
Uh-huh.
What is it called?
I don't know.
Oh. Fear the Walking Dead was literally just worse.
Yeah.
Lower budget Walking Dead.
You heard it here first. Walking Dead ripped off 28 Days Later.
Not the first one to say that. But yeah, overall, this movie has a very strong open. There's just like, it's such a heavy impact to see him walking through the streets of London, which is one of the most heavily and densely populated cities in the world. And there's just all those missing posters. He's finding money.
Yeah.
And
the music is so good. Mm-hmm. The really spooky music in the opening was created by John Murphy, and it's called In the House in a Heartbeat is the name of that.
No relation, I don't think. But we almost have the same name.
Almost. 4 letters off.
No.
3.
Did you forget how to spell my name?
It was just like, first name is different. That's 4 letters.
But yeah, so for the London scenes, the police would actually close the roads at 4 a.m. Blah, blah, blah.
4 a.m.
4 a.m. Yeah, it's like Atlantic London time, you know. The police would actually close the roads at 4 a.m. and filming would have to... I said it weird again.
You still did. Oh, sorry.
For the London scenes, the police would actually close the roads at 4 a.m. and filming would have to begin immediately. They would only give them 1 hour at a time, which I can only imagine how much rushing they would have to do. They would ask them to either wait for up to an hour or find another route, making many of them angry. But they actually had some foresight and got several... I'm reading this is quoted from sources, and they said they got extremely attractive young women, including the director's own daughter.
Oh, I didn't see that about the daughter. That's gross.
To make these requests, asking people to wait for an hour.
Okay, I thought that was weird, but knowing that it was his daughter, that's a little cringy. More cringy.
Yeah. It's weird.
If you were like...
But it worked.
It's just, you don't think, like, let me use my daughter as hot bait to fucking make people not get pissed at me? That's really gross.
Well, but I'm sure it was one of the things where, like, his daughter was part of the crew.
Still.
And
that's your daughter, man.
I don't know.
That's really weird. The billboard with all the missing people posters was shot at Piccadilly Circus, and it apparently caused controversy because some people found that it was insensitive after 9/11, but the movie was actually shot before the September 11th attacks, and Danny Boyle said that it was based on a photograph that he saw after an earthquake in China, and that if the movie was made after 9/11, he wouldn't have used that same shot, but that obviously was very much what it looked like after 9/11 in New York, was people trying to post photos of loved ones to try and find them.
And this actually isn't the only connection this movie has to 9/11, because part of the movie was actually shot on the very day. And ironically, unfortunately, but the scene they shot on September 11th, 2001 was the scene where Selena, Jim, Hannah, and Frank are actually celebrating.
Right, that's like the picnic scene, right?
The picnic scene.
Yeah.
And Danny Boyle said it felt extremely strange to shoot a celebratory scene on that particular day.
Mm-hmm. All of the scenes that were filmed at the mansion, which is where the soldiers were kind of hiding out, were filmed in the downstairs areas because the actual owner lived upstairs, which is kind of weird. And when Jim jumps through the window in the roof, he's actually jumping through a hole in the corridor down to the ground floor because they didn't have access to the upstairs areas.
The mansion they used was, I'm not going to say this right. It was at Trafalgar Park near Salisbury. And many rooms in the house, including the Cipriani painted music room and the main hall, were filmed with minimal set decoration. They agreed to not really change up the mansion or ruin it in any way, which obviously makes sense.
Right.
Especially if you have because that is clearly like an old historic building, and they would definitely not let them paint or, I'm sure they had in mind, like, we'll burn it, like, we'll have a fire break out, and like nothing like that could happen.
Right.
In that scene.
The film was shot almost entirely in sequence, which happens so randomly. Like, it doesn't happen very often.
No, but it actually kind of makes sense with this movie because the opening has, like, the most difficult shots, I would say, because there's the London stuff and the explosion, which would definitely be the most difficult. But yeah, it's weird when a movie is shot in order.
I always thought that with this one had to do with like, especially his name's Cillian Murphy, right?
Also no relation.
His physical appearance changes so drastically as the movie goes on. So I thought that was partially why it was in sequence, because he's so small by like the army setting. But yeah, that's cool.
Speaking of the scenes with the explosion, they actually filled out all the necessary paperwork to destroy it. It's called the Canary Wharf Petrol Station. But on accident, I mean, I guess that's just poor planning, but the police were not notified. And because of this, obviously, they sent a lot of troops and firefighters and everything to a giant explosion.
And in the case of something like that, like, how do you let, like, people know beyond the police?
Well, you don't. You just block off the roads.
When they would call the police would be like, yeah, it's a movie set.
Exactly.
Interesting.
I actually was walking to work downtown in Detroit for a brunch, a bar back shift. It was like, I had to be there at like 9 a.m. And this was in Campus Martius, right by the Lafayette and National Coney Island. And I saw a bunch of police, and I was like, oh God, what happened? And I just heard this loud engine, and I was like, is there a plane flying down here, or what's happening? And they were actually doing stock car racing. These like huge cars with like roll cages and everything drifting around all of Campus Martius and stuff.
Weird.
And it was like, I think it was some Red Bull video. But there was like 10 camera crews, drones everywhere.
So weird.
So it's just like a thing where they don't tell you everybody ahead of time. They just have a lot of police presence to make sure. Like, they made us wait. Like, they were like, you can't cross here.
Yeah.
And you hear this, just like, it was like the one car's engine was so loud, like I had to cover my ears when it was coming up on us. And it was, I don't know, probably as loud as like 10 cars combined. And it was just drifting around. It was pretty cool. And then it like went past us, and he was like, all right, go quick, because it's coming back in like 5 minutes.
Weird. One of the interesting things about casting the people who actually played the infected was Danny Boyle actually mainly wanted athletes for, obviously this is one of the only zombie movies where they run.
Yeah.
But
they're fast.
But it also would show like that their physical characteristics changed after the infection. I'm not saying that again. Okay. Excuse the motorcycle.
Excuse the motorcycle. But that's actually the scariest thing in this movie, I think, is how fast they are.
Yeah.
And how fast the infection happens. Just how fast everything is the scariest part.
Yeah, because like in any like Night of the Living Dead, it's like if you can just jog a little, you're going to outrun them. And then in this, it's like they turn and they are sprinting at you.
Full speed.
Yeah.
And unless you're like an athlete, you're done.
Yeah.
The symbol used for the movie, even on the poster, is actually the international symbol for blood-borne biohazard.
Which I thought that was interesting because I knew it was obviously biohazard, but I didn't realize that there was like a specific for blood-borne.
They actually did like a lot of research for this movie, from like world events to actual diseases and how they could possibly mutate. And the quote-unquote design for the symptoms of rage were actually based on Ebola, which can actually be transferred from primates to humans. And it is mostly transmuted through blood. Ebola can actually cause rashes, red eyes, and both internal and external bleeding, just like the infected in this movie, always like throwing up blood, and the eyes are the most distinctive
Right.
characteristic.
It just makes me think of when we were watching this, when we looked up that drinking game. And one of the things was every time someone vomits blood, take a drink. As soon as we read that, it was like, oh shit, everybody vomits blood.
Get drunk.
What were some of the other ones on that?
It was...
They were funny, whatever. That's the only one that I remember.
As far as the rules for the drinking game is, every time an infected is killed, take a drink. Someone gets bit, take a drink. The camera shakes like the Blair Witch Project, take a drink.
That was the other one I thought of.
Drink twice when a human dies or somebody throws up blood. Drink 3 times when you see a Pepsi can.
Oh, Pepsi, that was the other thing.
Because there's a lot of Pepsi cans.
There's a lot of Pepsi, yeah.
I'm sure they had a sponsor. Because he drinks a Pepsi in the beginning. There's a Pepsi machine. And there's just Pepsi.
There's a part when they're at his parents' house where she's like, do you want a Pepsi? Puts it on the counter.
Yeah. Specifically a Pepsi. Yeah. Alex Garland, the writer, and Danny Boyle, the director, didn't want the zombies in this movie to just be walking around saying brains. Even though that is great, they wanted to do something that was, different. This isn't they're radioactive zombies or, there's no voodoo witch doctor.
Right.
It's a new fear that drives the zombies in this movie. So, because, it's a modern society, they wanted it to be a mutation of a current disease, almost, because it was created in a lab and they were experimenting on chimps. So they wanted this to feel like it was humanity's fault and more realistic, because these zombies, quote, infected, whatever, I always say zombies.
I know, I do too, but...
they die just like a person does. And, when you watch Night of the Living Dead, they get shot in the chest 10 times and they're fine. Or other zombie movies, sometimes they'll get chopped up into parts, or even in Shaun of the Dead, they'll be walking around limbless, which does not happen in this movie. They wanted this movie specifically to be based more in reality.
The chimps are infected. They're highly contagious. They've been given an inhibitor.
Infected with what?
In order to cure, you must first understand.
Infected with what?
Rage.
What the fuck is talking about? Get the cages open.
No!
I mentioned earlier that they did a lot of research for this movie, and a lot of the scenes with the piles of bodies and the war footage and the it's all, they wanted to base it as much in reality as possible, and specifically they drew on an event that happened in Rwanda and Sierra Leone, where the locals piled bodies in the church, much like that happened in this movie.
Yeah, that part in the movie is really scary, because that's right when he's still trying to figure out what the fuck is happening.
And he walks into the church and there's all those bodies and infected. And yeah, all footage, because there's all the footage from around the world and footage showing what's going on in this movie. And they were advised to just use real footage, actual war footage, and they refused, and they actually recreated everything.
I think that's smart, though, because that's not really fair to put on an audience either.
Yeah.
Real dead bodies, even if you wouldn't know. It's just, yeah. And of course, because we talk about Stephen King on every episode now, he also bought out an entire showing of the film in New York City.
That's cool. Because people get to see it for free, and it helps support the movie with some sold-out shows. And if you didn't listen to our last episode, go check out Pet Sematary. We just covered our first Stephen King movie.
In the episode before that, we talk about Stephen King, and I think we talked about him in the episode before that.
Yeah, we talked about him in Pan's Labyrinth for sure. I don't know about the... was before Pan's Labyrinth?
I don't know. We talked about how we had never done a Stephen King movie.
Oh. Yeah. But now we did.
At the very end of the movie, when the plane flies over, the pilot says something in Finnish over the radio, and it actually translates to, "Will you send a helicopter?" which I thought was
I
cool.
didn't know that.
So there's no subtitles there, so you don't know what he says, but he sees them when they're jumping up and down.
I did read a thing about that jet, and it was a real jet. And it took the jet, they said something like 5 minutes to get from where it took off to get to them for that shot. And apparently it took them like 5 hours to drive to that location.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The jet goes so fast, yeah. There's also the scene where Jim escapes over the wall when the two soldiers are looking for him, when they're trying to kill him. And he looks up and he sees that jet flying. And that was actually shot by the director, Danny Boyle, who just took a camera home and was just shooting up into the sky, trying to get a plane flying. Because remember, it cuts from like Jim looking up, and then it just cuts to a straight up shot, and you don't see Jim or anything around him. And he was just like, yep, just going to shoot through the trees in his backyard. So you'll notice with this movie that the footage is rough, I guess is a way to put it. It's not a high quality camera, and they did that on purpose. All of the scenes with the infected are shot on a Canon XL1, which is a fairly low budget camera. But this camera can film at 1600 frames per second. And shooting at such a high speed on that camera, it just gives it that like intense grain and
Blair Witch Project.
You feel. And because this camera could shoot at such a high rate, they could shoot it at, that's like super slow motion. Not even the cameras I have today can do that. But it's what gives it that jumpy, unsettling quality to the infected. Because even if you shoot it at 1600 frames per second and then speed it back up to normal, it's not going to look right. It's going to look off. Which is perfect because it gives the infected always feel so strange in this movie.
Yeah, and the only time that they use that on a non-infected is that really like grotesque scene with Jim where he
is running around and killing
puts
everybody.
His thumbs through the guy's eyes. And I thought that this was really interesting. Obviously, of course, that's because it's trying to like play off of like, is he infected? Is he not? For like from Selena's point of view. But I also thought it was funny that it's quote unquote symbolizes Jim's righteous rage.
Yeah,
he's
because
also
the disease is rage.
With rage.
Yeah, because
to protect them.
Yeah, because
I just like the righteous rage.
Yeah, the soldiers are just awful, and they all deserve what they got.
Yep.
That was longer than a heartbeat.
Love the ending when, what does he say? He's like, you killed my boys or something like that, and then he gets killed by them in the end.
Oh, that part is the best.
Yeah.
When she, Hannah, backs the truck up to the zombie and lets he grabs him and then she drives away.
Like they said, perfect. Hi, Hannah.
Yeah, she's high.
Yeah, she's stoned in that scene.
She's like fucked up.
And he just gets dragged out and then immediately thrown up on.
Yeah.
Gotta take a drink. One last drink. One thing I forgot to mention earlier is actually the scenes where they're on the freeway. That's actually okay, I don't know anything about UK roads, but it's the M1. It's one, I know
Woodward.
that. That's Woodward here. It's one of their main roads. And they could only get permission to shoot there on one Sunday between 7 a.m. and 9 a.m., and police would gradually slow traffic in both directions. And on that day, they actually used 10 cameras to get all the shots of them driving on that freeway. And through all 10 cameras, they only got 1 minute of usable footage. So basically what they have in the movie is all that was usable.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's the part when they're all together, like driving after the tunnel and stuff.
And the tunnel is another thing. They had to get special permission to use that tunnel, and they had to get it closed down and all that. But apparently, the only reason they were able to use that is because that tunnel was brand new, and it wasn't even open to the public yet. It was only for like private and emergency use, and they just happened, right time, right place. And they were, we'll give you money.
Yeah, right.
So, and I think they only had a couple days to do it, though. There's I guess they were smart about all their shooting, because they had to make that giant wall of cars, and in the tunnel is the scene. There's the scene with all the rats. That's terrifying.
That is in the tunnel.
If you ever see hundreds of rats running, follow them. Follow them.
Run away from whatever they're running from.
Rats don't just group together and run. You gotta go. In the scene where Jim is hiding from the dead bodies, they call it the quote-unquote execution pit.
Jim is hiding from the dead bodies.
Jim is hiding from the dead bodies. Jim is hiding amongst the dead bodies. They actually shot that outside of a church in Salisbury. But apparently, one of the prop teams didn't pick up all of the fake bodies, and a local hairdresser saw them in the road, panicked, crashed her car, and called the police.
Yeah, yikes.
Who immediately came to investigate. Because there were a lot of bodies.
That would be really scary if you were driving down the road and you saw that.
And you saw like 7 dead bodies. Yeah, I'd freak out. I don't know if I hope I wouldn't crash my car.
Yeah.
But what a thing. What a funny, out of anything you could have forgotten. Imagine the crew's just driving home. Did we forget anything? Yeah, nah.
Right? Just a bunch of bodies.
Just a bunch of bodies. Somebody definitely got in trouble for that, though. And apparently, I didn't do this counting. I just read it as a funny tidbit for this movie, but apparently the word fuck is said 61 times.
That seems low, even.
It does. Because when they're getting chased, they're like, fuck, 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 fuck.
Yeah.
It seems... I feel like that's got to be close. It is a lot. But accurate. I would be swearing like a sailor if I was in...
fuck 61 times a day already. More than that, probably.
Let alone if you're getting chased by a bunch of infected.
There is a small documentary that you can watch on YouTube about this movie. It's called Pure Rage, which I did watch, but it mainly just talks about how a pandemic could happen very easily. So it's a little unsettling. Came out in 2007. It just really focuses on, yes, this could happen. This is how it would happen. And honestly, all of the comments on YouTube are like, this is unsettling to watch during COVID. So it was pretty weird. Not so much about the actual production, just more so about the premise of the movie, if it was real. But I thought this was funny. The actress that played Selena, she's quoted as saying in this documentary, "In secondary school, we were always told not to worry about global warming, but to worry about a virus. And that always stuck with me," end quote, which was part of her interest in taking
2020 and 2021.
But that's part of her interest in taking the role of Selena. As far as the sequel goes...
there's 28 weeks later.
Well, 28 months is what I'm talking about.
Well, yeah, but 28 weeks later is a good movie. We watched it the next day. It's a good sequel.
But there could be another sequel. And
I've been talking about it forever.
Yeah. So on IMDb, it's listed as pre-production. And I found this quote from... Garland. Hold on.
The writer.
That's the writer, right? Yeah. Quote, "We've just started talking about it seriously. We've got an idea. Danny and Andrew and I have been having quite serious conversations about it, so it is a possibility. It's complicated. There's a whole bunch of reasons why it's complicated, which are boring, so I won't go into it, but there's a possibility. Also adding, quote, "It's more likely to be 28 months than 28 years. 28 months gives you more places to go," end quote, hinting at the possibility of a fourth film if they ever get this third one going.
I don't think 28 years is a good idea. 28 months makes sense. Because I know
we'll see how 28 months is to see if 28 years
No,
makes
28
sense.
years would be stupid. Unless 28 years is like Mad Max. But it doesn't make sense for
I
the
don't know.
same...
What does that mean?
Mad Max?
Yeah.
Like Apocalypse.
Oh, I would think that like 28 years later would be good if like it turns out that like kids born during this time have like weird things because of the infection.
Exactly 28 years after they're born, they turn infected.
Oh my god.
No, that would be stupid. You can watch it on Hulu. It's on Hulu. Both of them are on Hulu.
28 days and 28 weeks.
Yep. And there's also a graphic novel, one of the two, that goes as like I think it's like an aftermath to one. I can't remember what it's called. I've never read it, but just letting you know it exists. It's called like 28 Days Later, blah, blah, blah. Like This has a extended title. For our next episode, we're going to talk about the 2011 horror comedy, The Cabin in the Woods.
Which I also just read was written by Joss Whedon.
You didn't know that?
Nope.
Oh. Yeah, he made a lot of movies.
Not a lot. He made Buffy.
He's made a lot of stuff. He worked on the Avengers.
Oh, so something I don't care about or will ever see.
Yes. And it was directed by Drew Goddard. Who is that?
That's the director's name. I didn't recognize anything else he's done.
But I'm super pumped to see this. I actually haven't seen it. I don't think I've seen this movie since I saw it in 2011 in theaters.
I saw it in theaters too. I own it though, so I've seen it a couple times.
Oh. Well, that makes it easy for us to watch it, because I don't know where it is. But I'll never forget the, just the gore fest that is the end.
Yeah.
I love it so much. Just all the different... I love when you see all, like, the cubes. What? This movie is 10 years old.
So what if somebody's listening to our podcast and they're like, I'm going to watch that movie so I can know about it before next week?
If they're listening to our podcast, they've seen it.
It's not true.
Okay, no more spoilers. Fine. Go watch it.
next week.
It's so good.
All the spoilers next week.
All the spoilers next week.
I'm laying down.